Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom, from movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. How's it going, man?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Doing great. A little sad, a little somber, but I'm ready to attack Black Panther.
Yeah, so this is a big week. Obviously, it's always a big week when a new Marvel thing, Marvel movies release. They're like these little like mini events.
Yeah, they are.
In and of themselves, but perhaps no bigger than this movie, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, the sequel to the first Black Panther film,
and the end of Phase 4.
Yeah, so a lot of things riding on this movie, not just on screen, in universe, in the MCU, but also outside the universe, obviously with the tragic passing of Chadwick Boseman. So before that, we figured this week we would go back and do our world famous film retrospective and film legacy on the first Black Panther film. And man, I just got done with it a couple hours ago because I like to do these like before we record them. I like to watch the movie like as soon as as close as I can to like us recording this, so like it's right there, fresh in my mind. And man, it was definitely an experience. It was definitely a journey, and just impossible to separate the the reality of the situation and what we now know happened to Chadwick. You know, it's hard to separate that from this first film now, and will be even harder to do with the second one. So definitely an interesting experience.
No, 100%. I mean, I watched this movie 3 days ago, but it was fresh in my mind. I made sure, got the biggest TV in my house, kind of made it an experience for myself. I have not seen that movie since Chad passed away, and no lie, he was my favorite actor in the world when he passed away. I mean, I played baseball when I was younger. He was Jackie Robinson, loved, comic books and comic book movies, and he's Black Panther. I mean, that's a perfect storm for me. So, just an inspiring person. I mean, for God's sakes, he was going to children's hospitals to see kids that had cancer while he had cancer. I mean, from all accounts of everybody he talked to, just a consummate professional and just the only thing we can ask to be as humans, and that's a good person.
Yeah.
So just from that frame where he's sitting in his royal kind of plane, and the camera pans up, it's on the helmet, and it pans up to him, kind of finally coming to terms with his father's death. It got me right away. Like, I was already welling up with tears like, he means so much, and he has such a power, but he's got such a grace to him too. I think that's the best compliment that I can give him as an actor. When he's there, and he really gave this MCU some new life and the character and the world that they built, and that comes through Ryan Coogler, who did a phenomenal job, and I forgot how well of a job that he did and how incredible of a director he is. So I can't wait to kind of talk about this movie. But first, we got a little news.
Yeah, we do have definitely some news. So first and foremost, James Cameron has started, I guess you could call this promotion. I'm not sure you can call it
his old man promotion.
Yeah, this is old man promotion from James Cameron talking about Avatar 2. He basically said, look, they have this plan. They've had this plan for almost a decade now about how many films they're doing, but he has since admitted that the performance of the sequel, Way of the Water, will definitely dictate the future of this franchise. He could envision a world where they finish this in 3 movies, or if this does well, they could continue with their 5-film plan.
If I don't get the quest for Awa, I'm going to be so mad.
It's an interesting kind of statement from him. Sure. I don't know where this is coming from. I don't know if he's just kind of like...
I mean, is James Cameron not the greatest double-down director in movie history of going to the studio and saying, I am the reason why you guys are afloat right now, so you're going to give me what I want, or here's your ultimatum?
Yeah, it could be that. It could be, a number of things. Maybe... he's definitely come out as a bit curmudgeon-y in the past couple months about this movie, and just like, look, this is what you're getting, deal with it kind of thing.
Sure.
So I don't know if he's anticipating some sort of backlash to that, and he's kind of maybe covering his bases a bit, like, maybe anticipating that maybe this movie won't do as well. I think we both have agreed that it's not going to perform like the first one did.
It's going to be interesting because it's the revisionist history that apparently the first one wasn't good, or no, the first one was not forgettable. But I mean, we already spoke about... See, here's the thing. Everybody loves to put the grandiose on top of these movies, and I'm definitely going to talk about it with Black Panther, because what they do a lot is you love to put this grand idea on something, and if it's one narrative to be it's bad, there's no saving grace for any point in this movie. And you're talking about these 1.5 to 2 hour, 3 hour movies. Like, there's so much to digest in there, and it's art at the end of the day too. So not everything is going to be for everyone, but I think the point I'm getting at is if it doesn't perform and he doesn't make these other one, and if it circles out to 3, I don't think that's the biggest deal in the world. Obviously, money's sakes, but it's the story is your number one thing you're kind of attacking and going after. So if he doesn't make them, he doesn't make them. But I just don't like that idea of, you know, people kind of going back and not loving the first one because you can't remember every single last character's names. If that doesn't, like, you know, if that replaces the incredible world he created. But yeah, I mean, it's still opinion based. If that's your opinion, that's your opinion.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, honestly, I was a little surprised with how kind of well the re-release did.
Oh my god!
A few weeks ago, like,
well, I mean, is that not going towards how great James Cameron is and what he was able to do? It genuinely feels that it's this alien world set years and years in the future, like, but there's always going to be a relation piece. This is why we tell these stories. There's something to always cling on to and relate to, and I mean, I think he got it, and I want to see more of that, and I think that's what we need. The timing is interesting, too, because it's December 16th, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. Prime time, that was the Star Wars spot, but there's no Star Wars movie, so Avatar can kind of take that December slot now, and I think it's time. Like, everybody, it's the holiday season. No better time to spend it with your family, and this movie's all about family on all accounts.
Yeah, and I mean, look, at the end of the day, James Cameron movies have rarely, I don't think, if ever, have missed as far as box office. I mean, he has 2 of the 3 top highest grossing films of all time when you talk about Avatar and Titanic, and then you have obviously Terminator, you have Aliens. So I mean, the guy doesn't miss, so he doesn't put his effort into projects that miss, and I don't think this is going to either, to be honest with you. We talked about this movie a bunch with the trailer releases, with the re-release of the first one. This is a captivating enough of a world to make money at the end of the day. So definitely intriguing. We're a month away now from a movie that is
to think about.
Yeah, some 12, almost 14 years in the making. So moving on to DC news. So obviously things are starting to take shape under the new leadership, and one of their spearhead actors, Jason Momoa, has kind of not spoken out, but he has revealed that he has spoken with James Gunn, and apparently coming off the back of that meeting is very excited about something. That's basically what it is.
Over the moon about whatever this announcement is. I mean, I can't speculate on anything. There's been no rumors or anything. I just gotta assume it. You know what I'm thinking? It could be as simple as they just have a plan, and like they genuinely have footing. Like, he's gonna be back with Henry. Like, they're gonna do like a more tried and true Justice League. It's funny. I was reading some Justice League the other day. I was reading Grant Morrison's run from the late 90s, early 2000s. I can't remember what it was, but I just want to feel that again for the Justice League. Like, let's just get the Justice League here, give them the hope, you know, gods amongst men, all that good stuff. Just have a little fun. I think that's a big piece that they can use, and maybe it is a solo project that he's ready for. Maybe it's a crisis event. The only thing that pops into my head was Flashpoint, because, I mean,
I thought that too.
He directly goes against Wonder Woman and is with Wonder Woman. So, I mean, there's potential in projects there. I mean, you got Jeff Johns' run is cool. Justice by Jim Kruger. I mean, that's something that might be adapted with something, but I'm just spitballing things. Like, I mean, the Jeff Johns run is the one, but they kind of covered a lot of the Jeff Johns run in the first movie, so I don't know what this project could be, but maybe I said it before before we hopped on, and I was joking, but he's this excited. What if he is going to play Lobo or something, and they're going to give him another character in that universe?
That would be kind of insane to try and do. I mean, it could also be just as, like you said, it could just be also as simple something as sitting down with James Gunn and hearing ideas and being encapsulated by whatever ideas that James Gunn is spitballing, and, you know, Jason Momoa is in that, cut from that, like, the rock cloth of, like, being, like, a hype man. Yeah. So, you know, at the end of the day, if he has a conversation with James Gunn and hears, like, James Gunn is working on some Justice League thing that gets him super excited, or working on some Superman thing that gets him super excited, like, that could also make him excited, even if he isn't necessarily tied to it in any way. And, you know, maybe he's a fan of a certain character that James Gunn is going to maybe spearhead a project about, it could be anything. Like, it was intentionally vague, obviously, just to get people talking about it, and mission accomplished.
No, I
Jason Momoa.
I agree.
We have some more casting for the Acolyte. So this Star Wars show that we don't know a ton about, that is starting to take even more shape. We got a little bit of a plot synopsis, and then we had 2 additions to the cast. So Carrie-Anne Moss, obviously from The Matrix fame, she plays Trinity. Jessica Jones also, she's in, and a myriad of other things. And Daphne Keane, who played X-23 in Logan, obviously her most notable role. They're both joining this cast alongside Amanda Stenberg, Lee Jung-jae, and Jodie Turner-Smith. So it's definitely a cast that's taking shape. And honestly, coming off the back of what Andor's doing right now, I'm very excited for what this could be.
You know what I feel like this might feel like? This might feel like a bit Old Republic, like the cinematics. I was watching those cinematics the other day, and just how incredible they are, but they mix the perfect of, like, this quasi-political thriller, which is Star Wars, because war is politics. Whatever Denzel Washington said in Crimson Tide, war is politics with weapons, whatever it is. But you know what I'm getting at. Like, Star Wars is a political arena. That's where it takes place. So I can kind of see this happening, like the, disintegration of what the High Republic era was could be kind of an interesting concept, leading into what what happens going up to the days of Palpatine and the Rule of Two, all those good things. But, I mean, they're putting together a lot of talent, and I just feel like Star Wars is headed in a very positive direction, and hey, that could be the idea of, hey, TV allows you to tell a lot more of a story. And I mean, Andor is I went from, wanting these lightsaber battles to, like, being fully invested in, like, this, political rebel thriller that's just kind of, it's big in scale, but it's also very conscious of, it feels like an HBO Max show. Like, it doesn't even feel like a Disney Plus show. So, hats off to all the creators of Andor and what they're being able to do. You proved me wrong.
Yeah.
You proved me wrong 1,000,000%. And, I'm really invested in what they do once you add, the Force into it and the Jedi and the Sith. I think it's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, as Andor goes on, it gets me more and more excited to eventually talk about it, because we're going to when the season wraps up. And man, it's honestly, I think I said the other day, I think it might just be outside, like, my top 5 as far as, like, Star Wars things.
Yeah, it's really, really incredible. Great. And I'm hoping Marvel takes some hints and does one show. Just give us one. And I mean, according to what people are saying about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, like, it's been a breath of fresh air to get something that's serious. Not that none of these other projects in Phase 4 were serious, but something that's, like, obviously you're going to have your jokes, but the narrative itself is, like, it makes you feel something because of the stakes and the weight.
Yep. Other Star Wars related news, apparently we're getting a Grogu short film.
Yeah. I do not think it's going to release on November 12th.
No, I don't
hold my breath on that. I think that was a mistake.
Yeah, that's one of their mascot, essentially.
Yeah, what is it? Italy accidentally did that?
Yeah, so I would imagine this would be very much in the vein of the I Am Groot kind of shorts that they put out on Disney Plus. Like, Grogu is definitely a mascot for the kids at the end of the day. So if they want to, do a little thing for him, that's cool. Also, Sean Levy's getting a Star Wars movie.
Sure. I mean, Sean Levy, is he not? It feels for Sean Levy like he's at the cusp of, like, his prime of his career right now. He's about to direct Deadpool 3. He just did the Atom Project. He just did Free Guy. And there's something else, right?
Well, he's an executive producer for Stranger Things.
Right, like, I feel like this is the portion of his career where, like, he's got all the credibility, he's got a lot of influence in Hollywood, so cool. I mean, I think Star Wars they're getting it now, like, I don't think they realize, like, oh, we're allowed to do stuff outside of the Skywalkers. Like, this is actually incredible. So, once they understood that, you talk Andor. I mean, Andor is a spinoff from, Rogue One, which is, a spinoff from that. But, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they're starting to understand that let's explore the larger universe. So, I think the next, like I said, the next 2 things that they need to attack is getting us a new Jedi, a new era, getting, the younger audience to cling on to some new characters, because obviously that didn't go too well in the sequel trilogy, but, it just, the tone that they're setting, I mean, literally and figuratively, are really, really starting to open some eyes.
Yeah, I totally agree. And we have some more casting for Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So an actor that we're going to be talking about in a little bit, Daniel Kaluuya, has joined the cast as Spider-Punk.
Cool.
Yeah,
is he going to be British?
I hope so.
That'd be kind of cool. Like
why not make him Spider-Man UK then?
Maybe he's both. Who's to say?
Maybe he's both. We've talked about. We actually haven't properly talked about Into the Spider-Verse, and we definitely will at some point before this movie comes out. But the voice cast is stellar and continues to be stellar. And then there are the rumors swirling that perhaps that the MCU iteration, potentially voiced by Tom Holland, they might even get the guy who voices him in What If. Yeah, that's always possible.
Right. I think, what did they say? It was the rumor that I heard was the 90s Spider-Man that we all grew up with. I had to watch it on Disney Plus. I'm sorry, or Disney XD. You remember Disney XD back in the day? It was 90s Spider-Man, Yuri Lowenthal, Tom, Andrew, and Toby. All of them were going to kind of be in there, so that's going to be interesting.
Which was a rumor. Even going back to the first one, going back to Into the Spider-Verse.
I genuinely think they're all going to say one line and that's it. Like I
could see them utilizing Yuri Lowenthal a bit more, only because he has voiced Spider-Man in other things. Yep. Besides the Spider-Man PS4 game, he's voiced him in some mobile games. He's voiced him in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. He's voiced him in a bunch of stuff at this point. He's becoming like the definitive, like, you know...
He's like the Kevin Conroy for Spider-Man.
Kinda, yeah. He's kind of approaching that level. Like, and it's weird to say that Spider-Man doesn't really have a Kevin Conroy. Right. I mean, Josh Keaton's probably the closest, being the 90s, 90s cartoon Spider-Man. Yep. But even that isn't really as definitive as, say, Kevin Conroy or George Newbern is for Superman. Yep. It's...
Or Tara Strong for Harley Quinn.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool that Spider-Man's... It feels like Yuri Lowenthal is becoming that. Yep. And I think a performance in Across the Spider-Verse totally makes sense. Yeah. The suit was seen in the first one. Right. In the first Into the Spider-Verse movie. So, yeah, I could definitely see that. Yeah. Some HBO news. So Westworld is done.
Wow.
After 4 seasons. Yeah. The cast will be getting paid for their 5th season. So makes me think that this was... I don't know what this was.
Yeah, I mean... what I'm thinking is... There's that thing about Christopher Nolan, Spielberg, Zavlov, and Safran all had a lunch today, so that I didn't take that as seriously as I probably should have. What I'm thinking genuinely, I do think they're going to try to lure Christopher Nolan to come back maybe and take a more of a producer-esque role and like take all those movies that are high budget that could win an Oscar, like those level of movies, and market them, and then give Spielberg, that classic section, like keep making the types of movies, just make it under the HBO banner. What I'm kind of getting at for this is more of like, I genuinely kind of feel that, I don't know, go ahead, man. I need to arrange my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely interesting that the series that is pretty critically acclaimed is pretty suddenly being cut short.
Right. I remember my thoughts now. What I was getting at is more, I feel like this isn't just a DC thing. This is a completely systemic restructure of it's not only what they do, it's the very reasoning of why they do things. Like, I think you have to look at your competitions. That's just, at the end of the day, for them, as much as we love to do this and we love to talk about this, theorize these characters, fall in love with them, for them, this is a business at the end of the day. So competition based, like some of these higher budget shows they might need to cut to give money to these other projects. Like, if you want this DCEU that's perfect and like the MCU, all this, you're going to need to take money from, and Westworld was a extremely high budget show with extremely A-list actors that you need to take away from. So I definitely genuinely think that's what they're doing, is cutting costs where they can, where you could be like, you got 4 seasons of Westworld.
Exactly.
You got, who else? What else did they cut? Like Euphoria, like give the money to that. Give the money to the thing that is going to get them subscribers and going to make them money.
The Last of Us.
Like those are the things that are going to immediately make anything DC we drop. It's going to immediately make us money. Like that's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, it does make sense when you consider it in that way. Like, Westworld kind of not had its run, but as far as like prestige TV, 4 seasons is pretty good. I mean, we joke all the time about Netflix, like most Netflix shows don't go beyond 3-4 seasons, like at the most. Stranger Things is kind of the exception to that, going for a 5th season. Right. But look how long that's taken to take shape. So prestige TV is not built like cable TV, where you get, we talk about The Flash getting 9 seasons, Arrow getting 8 seasons, Supernatural getting 14 seasons. Like, prestige TV doesn't do that.
Yeah, they shoot all of those. Like, people don't understand, like, a TV show like The Flash, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because I'm watching that right now, all those shows shoot while the episodes are still coming out, especially those CW shows. They'll, like, I guarantee you, in the back half of a lot of those seasons, a lot of that stuff is off the cuff changes that they make week before, like, because they need to follow a TV release schedule. So a lot of those breaks that we see, and like, I remember when I was very much in the throes of the Flash and Arrow and all those shows where I'd be like, we just went on a break. Like, my adult brain now is telling me like they needed a break because they were shooting them. Like, you gotta have some time to carve some stuff out, because at the end of the day you want to make these projects, so it's a lot more logistically difficult than anticipated.
Yeah, and it totally makes sense. We have more. This is turning into like Oppenheimer with this Agatha Coven of Chaos show.
Is that the new one? Add it to the whiteboard.
with the casting news that we're getting every week. So bet you didn't have this on the on the dartboard. So Eric Andre and Sashir Zamata have apparently joined this cast. I'm done speculating about who these people are playing.
No, I
genuinely don't know.
I need Eric Andre to play Mephisto. If there's one thing I would ever need in the history of the world, is Eric Andre to play an unhinged, absolutely crazy version of Mephisto. I would love that. Because isn't Evan Peters supposed? No, Evan Peters is going to be in Wonder Man.
Yeah.
So what is this show? Like, I don't know what this show is supposed to be.
I don't know. I thought maybe it was going to be maybe some type of prequel, like early, like witch era Agatha, but it does seem like it's going to be set in the modern day.
Sure.
And
sure.
at the end of the day, I do think this is going to be kind of like the shaping her into an anti-hero kind of character, getting her. This is what they do with their popular villains most of the time. I mean, you look at Loki, they go through like that reformation, that reclamation of their character that steers them away from villainy and gets them more towards like the stride on the line between hero and anti-hero. So I do think that's what they're going to do with Agatha Harkness, and she's going to be the star of this show, and we'll see how it turns out. I genuinely don't know. It's got a lot of great names attached to it, so we'll see. And then just the last bit of late breaking news right before we started this. So Disney Plus is apparently developing an Indiana Jones TV show for Disney Plus. It's interesting.
You got two options, right? Either get Harrison Ford to come back, which he isn't. I genuinely don't think.
No.
Or, you know what they could do? Keep the continuity going from Star Wars. You just get Alden Ehrenreich to play young Indiana Jones.
I don't know what this looks like. Like, is it an Indiana Jones show? Is it just set in the Indiana Jones universe? And if that's the case, is there a compelling thing about the Indiana Jones universe that isn't Indiana Jones?
Sure, because they don't lead.
It's not like Star Wars. It doesn't have lore.
Yeah, the lore is through Indiana Jones, because if nobody touches that crap, then everything's fine.
Right.
So I do think that they're going to get somebody to play a young version of Indiana Jones.
It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
I hope they don't do like another person takes the mantle and it's a James Bond situation, because the only person I'll accept for that is Lashana Lynch as 007, because she was incredible.
Here's your hat. Here's your whip.
Here's your hat. Here's your whip.
Your Indiana Jones.
Here's your white shirt.
Nicolas Cage.
Nope. Here you go, Keanu Reeves.
Ooh.
Who's the most unhinged people to play Indiana Jones? What about Shia LaBeouf?
No.
Oh yeah.
Nope.
Just kidding. We renounce Crystal Skull.
Jared Leto?
Nope. Matt Smith.
Oh, yes. I'm back in. I'm on board.
Matt Smith is Indiana Jones.
So I don't know. That's fun. I just didn't think the Indiana Jones-averse was marketable enough to do.
Wasn't that thing that Chris Pratt was going to be Indiana Jones? Wasn't that a thing?
Yeah, that was a thing.
Is that still... What do you think that still is a possibility? Because I'm not going to lie...
Didn't they kind of make his character from Jurassic World kind of Indiana Jones-ish?
Yeah, crap. Even I think he had... Nah, did he have the hat for a little bit? No, I don't think so.
I don't think he had a hat, but he's definitely cut from the Indiana Jones mold of action hero.
Chris Pratt a little bit, like, very vaguely kind of does look like the 80s, like, post-Star Wars. Yeah, he really does look like Harrison Ford when he cut his hair. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Man.
Get Alden Ehrenreich, you cowards. Have him be Indiana Jones.
That would be fun.
That would be fun.
I'd be into that.
Is that just like when he ages out of playing General Ross, like Alden Ehrenreich is also...
Oh, he got cast in Oppenheimer, didn't he?
Who?
Alden Ehrenreich?
Is he?
Isn't he in that?
Everybody's in that movie. I'm in that movie. I'm the nuclear bomb.
Man. Yeah, I don't know, man. Let's talk about Black Panther. So, yeah, Black Panther, let's just kind of set the stage a little bit. So Black Panther was officially announced in 2014, and then not long after that, Chadwick Boseman was announced that he would be taking on the role of T'Challa.
You remember that? I remember that. They did. That was like one of the first times they did a version like that, where they bought like the cat, like
they had RDJ and Chris Evans bring him in. Yeah.
And was this back when Captain America 3 was supposed to be Serpent Society? It wasn't supposed to be. I don't think it was supposed to be Civil War at that point, because you remember they switched it to Civil War in like 2014 like the end of 2014, 2015, because I think they had a different movie slated, and then they were like, "What? Can we just do Civil War as a Captain America movie?" And Robert Downey Jr. said, "Sure, just pay me." And that's why they killed him in Endgame. He was making way too much money.
Yeah, so then that's essentially what we get. So Boseman's first appearance as T'Challa in universe is in Captain America Civil War. It serves as a backdoor pilot of sorts as for Black Panther. And, you know, we haven't properly talked about Civil War either, but we actually did talk about Civil War on another podcast, but he's great in Civil War.
When it's just, like I said, that presence, but there's the grace to the presence. That just look to the camera or not look to the camera, but that head turn that he has when they announce him in Vienna and he starts talking to is, you feel that there's legacy and there's purpose here. Like there's intent behind this casting and intent. And I mean, you want to talk about Chadwick Boseman himself. He was creating quite the resume for himself up until this point. Like this is one of those examples. Like Benedict Cumberbatch is another. He was
the biopic guy.
Yeah, he was the biopic guy. He was the guy that you get to play all these prominent Black people.
And he's fantastic.
Man, he might have, outside of, you know, Cap and Iron Man, obviously, he might have my favorite sub-arc or, you know, B-plot in this movie of being his revenge tour, basically, because he genuinely feels different in here than he does in Black Panther, and I'm so upset with younger me for not appreciating it, because I used to think this was a problem, how different he felt, but I had to remember that his father just died, and he wasn't thinking about kingship. He wanted to kill Bucky Barnes was the only thing on his mind. That little Civil War's got a lot of great subtlety to it. That little conversation he has with Natasha talking about, you know, the afterlife and how Wakandans view it and how his father viewed it, and he ends it with saying, "I'm not my father," and walks away. Like, he's so cold in this movie. He's so cold, man.
Mm-hmm. And then, you know, obviously that paved the way for this movie. Mm-hmm. So Ryan Coogler was announced as the director for this movie. Ryan Coogler was not Ryan Coogler yet.
No, but
at this
he
point
was off the back of Creed 1. So
yeah, and Fruitvale Station.
Fruitvale Station and then Creed 1. So it's kind of cool. I think about this, you know, as what I want to do, but I was thinking about this while I was watching the movie, like the big three that you get. So a couple I can think of off the top of my head is the Barry Jenkins way. It's Barry Jenkins. You get you have James Laxton to shoot your movie, and you get Nicholas Britell to do the score. What's another one that I can think of? Christopher Nolan. You get Hans Zimmer, Christopher Nolan, Hoytema to shoot your movie. And for Ryan Coogler, a lot of his team was you get him, you get Ludwig Göransson, and you get Rachel Morrison to shoot your movie. So the three of them together, along with the whole crew, created such a world, and I think this might be the best part about this movie is, I mean, they set the stage to use it in Infinity War. If this movie didn't perform, Infinity War is not taking place in Wakanda, but what they were able to do, and I mean, the cultural impact definitely shaped that too.
Yeah, which is something we definitely have to talk about, because this movie really did take on a life of its own. Oh my gosh. I mean, man.
I knew you back then. It was
unbelievable. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and it's really, you know, a testament to what they wanted to do with this movie. They wanted this movie to be ostensibly black excellence, is what they like. The cast is a who's who of black actors in Hollywood. It's really incredible, and you know, it's not something that I can particularly speak to, but you could probably eloquently put it more than I can about just what the representation and the unequivocal kind of blackness of this movie means. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's what it is for me is just this, it's this portrait of what can be, and this portrait of, you know, this versus mentality that's so much. I mean, he even talked about it with Namor, of this idea of Namor wasn't going to be, you know, the straight up villain of Black Panther 2. It's this idea that this connectivity piece, I mean, it's so beautiful, the relationships that you see in the land where you go to. It's not this land where it's the hood anywhere. It's just straight Wakanda. It's just straight this place that's this hub for, what's funny? Anytime they do that, anytime that Hollywood goes to those Middle Eastern countries or those African countries, it's always like, street markets with people stealing everywhere and like this chase sequence that needs to happen through there. But once you go through European countries in some movies, I feel like that doesn't happen as frequently. Like when they go to like France, Spain, like all that stuff generally doesn't happen. But this movie is just people being in their home and loving their home. And the big motif of this movie is the love of your country and the love of what you do.
Yeah, it's such a great rebuking of so many tropes that you see in Hollywood, in movies, particularly around black actors, black settings, black characters. You're seeing a predominantly black cast in a position of royalty in a wealthy nation that is technologically superior to every other nation on earth. There's a regalness to it, but there's also just this cultural touchstone element to it that you get kind of with the Border Tribe, where they kind of don't lose their African roots. Like they still stay true to that despite their technological marvels. It's really, really incredibly done. And I mean, the cultural impact was unbelievable.
I couldn't. This movie made $1 billion, but it was the other things. It was. They threw things in those movies, and it's funny. I just watched Back to the Future yesterday, and I was thinking about like how movies date themselves and how modern age movies don't date themselves as well as like 80s and 90s and 70s movies. But this movie dates itself in the best possible way. But there's just little.
It's like a time capsule of like great black artistry in the modern 21st century. Like you talk about Kendrick Lamar basically curating the entire soundtrack to this movie.
Yeah.
Like that album in itself was a
mess.
was a masterpiece.
Right.
And it wasn't even a quote unquote real album. It was just, we got Kendrick Lamar to curate all these other artists, get them together and create some magical, songs to accompany this movie, which is not something that I can really remember when they do something like that.
No, it's truly a unique experience. I mean, just around the world, and like, we live in some small town comparatively to everybody else. I mean, the theater was just absolute for weeks. I saw this movie like 4 times because I went with different people 4 different times, and like I went like 2.5 weeks after, and the theater was still packed after that. Like everybody needed to see this movie. It was just one of those things you could not miss.
Yeah, I mean, sports, you look at sports, like people were always throwing up the Wakanda Forever salute, like in sports.
Yep. I think it was it was Victor Oladipo at the dunk contest. He had the Black Panther mask. Like everybody was wearing Black Panther cleats, like for the football season. Like it truthfully was the biggest thing that they had ever thought about doing.
Yeah, and it showed not just in the critical reception, but also it is, whether you want to call it justified or not. I guess the only movie that would potentially have an argument would be The Dark Knight, but it's the first superhero movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah, much to people's behest, and I genuinely was thinking about it because I guess before Chadwick died, because I hadn't seen that movie, it had been legitimately 2 years since I had seen that movie. And people had their complaints, and that's what I talked about earlier with this big umbrella we put things under. I feel like it's not that simple ever to put these things under this, grand umbrella, because there's so much subtleties and there's so much things that go into this movie. Like, there is a reason this movie was nominated for Best Picture, and, there's going to be 2 sides. There's going to be, like, the general pop that says, why can't this movie be nominated for... If it was the biggest movie of the year, then why is it not nominated for the Best Picture?
The No Way Home argument.
Right, like, why is, like... That's why I think Top Gun Maverick probably toes the line the best, in my opinion, of like a genuinely really great movie mixed with like a big summer blockbuster. But a movie like this, I think, might have been the precursor to it. Like a really genuinely huge movie that why couldn't it be nominated for a best picture? Yeah,
it kind of hit those 3 kind of milestones, or I guess touchstones, that you look for in a great movie, right? So it's shot well, it's done, it's shot and done well, performed well, it made money, and it's culturally significant. What else could you want out of a movie at the end of the day?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people needed this movie too. This was a movie that was much needed. And to be honest, Marvel needed this movie at the time. It's funny because this is the time where DC was starting to run a little bit. They were even though the movies weren't, critically acclaimed, that's still competition at the end of the day. That people and those characters are more classic at the end of the day. Your Superman, your Batman. So they definitely, needed to have a hit. And this is right before Infinity War comes out. So this is your big, grand movie. And it's the fact that they use this as a backdrop for this movie just tells me everything I need to know about this movie.
Yeah, and by the time this movie comes out, we're almost 10 years into the MCU's run, and we still didn't have a black-led project at the end of the day. It's every project before that, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, The Incredible Hulk, Guardians of the Galaxy has alien characters, but it's still spearheaded by Chris Pratt at the end of the day. So it needed that movie because of, momentum, but it also just needed this movie for so many different reasons that don't even have anything to do with the movie industry in general. It just needed this, right. And it needed all these people, like everyone that from Ryan Coogler to Ludwig Göransson, they all feel important to this movie. The people behind the camera, the people in front of the camera. It's hard for me to take anybody out of this movie and put somebody else in and have it feel the same.
Yep.
They all bring such a unique energy to this movie that, we're about to talk about because, again, this is one of the most important superhero movies that has ever been made.
This is probably one of the most important movies, period, in cinema history. And if you want to argue me on that, just go look at the box office. That'll just tell the story that it needs to tell.
Yeah. And so... And at the end of the day, the funny thing is, this movie, as important and as significant as it became, is ostensibly an origin story.
It is. So yeah, let's talk a little plot. And what I love about this movie is kind of how it contests. It tells this the main theme of this movie is, for me, what I took from it is kind of home. It's as simple as that. Like what your home means to you, what your family means to you, and like. What Black Panther Wakanda Forever is going to do is talk about loss and how it's not only how you lose, a person, and you know what, I'll reverse that. It's not only how you lose a monarch and like a celebrity and like a king, but, a sister lost her brother, a mom lost her son. Like that's as simple. And you pick up in this movie and T'Challa loses his father. And we talked about it with Civil War. He opened that movie. He's on a revenge tour, but now he has duties he needs to get back to. And, this movie talks a lot about the sins of the father. Could they define the sins of the son? That's a big trope that goes on in this movie that I appreciate. That scene broke my heart that I couldn't remember when he goes into the ancestral plane and it's Oakland for Killmonger. That's where he goes to. He doesn't go to the plains in Wakanda. He goes to Oakland to see his father. Just further, getting across that point that he is the outsider to them. And he told him, like, you are always going to be an outsider no matter what you do. And this liberation of Black people too is such a big piece of this too. And that's why he's the villain, but this is, for a lot of Killmonger is the greatest villain to come out of this universe. I mean, that's probably, usurped by Thanos at this point. But I mean, at the time, Michael B. Jordan was at the high of highs you can be as an actor that I can remember. Like, he genuinely was like the biggest actor on the planet at that time, he did Creed, he did this, and I mean, the performance he gave it's interesting, because I mean, I have my gripes I think his main issue is just his line delivery. That's like the only thing, because it can come, what it comes across? That he picked up the paper and just read it. That's what it comes across to me. But what I love about Michael B. Jordan that I think, again, it's putting things under this broad spectrum that he can't deliver, like, so he's a bad actor. I think what he has under his belt, he's one of the greatest, in my opinion, in the modern age. He's a really great example of a physical actor. Like, his physical prowess, not just literally his like physique, which that was like incredible shape, but the things he does, like, just the smaller things, like his presence is so booming. Like, you can really feel him walk into a room. That 180 shot that they pull off in the throne room is incredible. And it's those broad shoulders walking in there too. Like, you genuinely feel fear of what this man can do. This kid from Oakland can genuinely do to, take over the most technologically advanced country in the world. It's really awesome.
Yeah, and yeah, I totally agree with what you said about him, because upon rewatching this, I was like, it's still captivating because he delivers. I'd said to you before, those emotional moments.
Yeah, yep.
He delivers incredibly well when he talks about, you know, when he first confronts the royal family and the leaders of all the tribes, like, and he kind of says his piece. He's really great, but from up until he gets to Wakanda, it's a pretty flat kind of performance.
And he's also a little absent too, but this movie, I think, is actually paced pretty solid. This is a pretty solid pacing.
Yeah,
I don't think there's anything that really drags too much, but you miss him for a little bit, and then with the Claw stuff, and I'll get into Andy Serkis as Ulysses Claw, but what I think it is for me is he does have a little difficulty, like, conveying, like, subtlety. I think it was such, like, you needed that boom in the second and third act, which the first act you needed a little bit of, like, you know, build and crescendo into that point.
Yeah, and you know, on top of the themes that you mentioned earlier, there's this theme of kind of like the isolationist nation, right? That's essentially what is at the core, you know, morality of this movie. Not particularly for the characters, because I think the morality at play is what you alluded to, like the sins of the father. That's the morality for the characters, but for Wakanda as a nation, that's the morality at play, because you understand everybody's side to everything, because it's Killmonger's kind of... Killmonger takes Nakia's position, but obviously exacerbates it, you know, to like 1,000, because that's... Killmonger and Nakia's position on Wakanda are not terribly different. It's just, you know, the way they want to go about it.
Essentially what it is it's... To me, that they are Professor X and Magneto, or Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. What it is it's the one that, yes, I do want to, you know, stay, you know, I do want to maybe help or stay isolated, but I can't, but I have to go about this a peaceful way. The other one's like, how can you watch this happen? And you know where a lot of that for me works? It's through Sterling K. Brown. His, like, he doesn't have like a huge role, but man, he really brings it in. For me, I think he is to jump the gun, he's my most underrated character in this movie. But it's when they do the flashback and they jump back and he's talking about, like, they're overly policed and incarcerated, like that line delivery, putting the backdrop of Oakland in there. In this fantastical world, like, it feels believable. Like, he comes from this nation where everybody that looks like him is royalty, to a nation that he comes and they're just second class citizens to everybody else. It's just, it wouldn't fathom. So he's just like, if we have the tools to have them overthrow this, why would we just not give that? It just doesn't make sense to him.
And on top of that, it's the perception too, that, you know, he looks at, you know, Wakanda, which is perceived as this kind of third world nation, you know, and how his people are treated in Wakanda, which he knows the truth of, versus America, which is, you know, a self-proclaimed first world nation, and see how his people are treated there. And to him, the math ain't math.
Yeah, it's backwards. It doesn't make sense that this is what happens. And I mean, that's why, if you want to look a little deeper into it, that's why Killmonger's so complex, because it's funny, he adopts all the things, and T'Challa says it to him, like, you became the very, like, he pulled the Obi, like, you became the very thing you swore to destroy, like, all these oppressors, that you're turning yourself into the very thing that you don't want to be.
And then Killmonger's counter that is, you know, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just using their tools against them. And because in his eyes, they deserve it. Like, he wants Wakanda to be as great as its potential, you know, he rips, you know, the sun never sets on the British Empire. He rips that line and he says that, you know, the sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire. That's literally how he sees the vision for his people. Yeah, and this world is kind of cool because it does, you know, double down on the Avengers world, because there is the line thrown out, like, the rest of the world is catching up to us. Like, you have this guy from California that's able to create these suits that can defend the world. You have super soldiers running around. Like, it's not going to be long before, if he gets a little vibranium and he mixes that tech with this, like, you can definitely feel, like, the fear starting to set in. Like, there needs to be action, and a lot of that comes through Daniel Kaluuya's Wakabi. He's the one where it's just like, I'm going the other side. Like, I'm clinging to the other cause of, like, we need action generally right away. Like, I watched my parents die because you guys did nothing. Their killer was never brought to justice, and that's Claw. And then he slips through T'Challa's fingers as well, and that's really the last straw for Wakabi. He's like, I thought things would be different, you know, from going to your father, from your father to you, but it's the same result, man.
Yeah, this movie's the big theme is succession. Essentially, I think that's probably the main theme of this is succession and royal bloodlines, and kind of what Game of Thrones deals with that's like the whole usurp of Game of Thrones is that. But what for this it is more, it's more personal for this, because why does he not have a claim? If he's the it's the younger son, but why can he not fight for and some of the royal council members say, like, you know what, he's not wrong, he should be able to fight him for this. They dismiss him, and then he shows and he says when he says who he is, that's when like that's the big mic drop in the second act, but leading into the Warrior Falls scene. But man, what I really love about it too is how they're able to kind of craft like these fight scenes too, and they all feel so personal too. That's something that's kind of rare, because a lot of times it can feel like cannon fodder, but these genuinely feel like, actual like stakes fights, no matter what fight it is. Like, you look at the end fight, you look at the first Warrior Falls between him and M'Baku, and then the second one where, he dies for a little bit. It's all three of those are extremely personal.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, like I said this to you earlier, I wanted to try something a little different, kind of streamline these reviews that we did. So I created some categories. Everyone loves a good category. Yeah. So
our 80s episode was probably the greatest one of this.
Yeah, so I created some categories that will help us kind of streamline this and talk about this movie in a bit of a more kind of structured way. So I guess the first thing I wanted to start, I'll start with, since you mentioned the action sequences, what was our favorite action sequence in this movie? It could be a big action sequence. It could be kind of like the fights that you alluded to. So what was yours?
This is, you take these things so close to your heart, especially, being an adult and being able to perceive the things that are really going on in the real world and how you separate them. So that first Warrior Falls scene is so emotionally like grandiose, and it's got little small pieces in the big pieces of it, but it's a perfect introduction to how they go about their politics, how they go about their kingship and their royal families, and seeing all the tribes come together, but also mixed with the technology. Like, this place is so cool, like they can just turn their waterfall into an actual cliff, so they can do this. Like, it's like retro futurism. Like, it's so cool of a concept, but it shows me how incredible that Chadwick Boseman is that character mainly. Just him hyping himself up to kind of rally himself, looking at all these people, because he understands what he needs to do for these people. Like, he can't have M'Baku come in here. He's a wild card, essentially. He's not a villain, he's a wild card. So he can't have that. It's got to be him. He's next in line in succession, and he's got to show that he's not this kid that M'Baku claims he is. So that fight it's very good. It's brutal. It's a pretty brutal fight. There's like stabbings in that fight, and I love the way that both the Dora Milaje and the Jabari kind of creep forward in like a ritualistic fashion. I think it's curated, and it's so cultivating to kind of watch this. I really enjoy it.
There's a great physicality to that, mm-hmm. to both of the ceremonial fights, mm-hmm. that the rest of the movie doesn't quite have. So I guess on the flip side of that, that's a great scene, because from inception to when it eventually ends, like you said, it feels like you get the cultural aspect so well, mm-hmm. in that scene, from the ceremony, yep. itself to when the Jabari tribe descends upon the ritual to T'Challa feeling, you can feel that he feels the pressure of this moment, yep. especially when you think it's going to be this simple, thing, like we pass. Like, it's a formality, yep. almost. Like, they all recognize that he's next in line, he's going to become the king. Yep. And then the Jabari tribe come down and they're like, not so fast, my yep. friend. And then you see that pressure when M'Baku mm-hmm. kind of has him on the ropes, yeah. where he's like, like, he can't, this is like his first, yeah. like, kind of outing.
That's a great way to put it, as pressure. I really like that perspective of, like, he does have a tremendous amount of pressure put on his shoulders right away, and man, when he goes into the ancestral plane for the first time, that conversation, that's why Ryan Coogler's so good, is because he cares about conversation, and he understands that conversation. Even the biggest of action movies that's what needs to kind of drive it a little bit. So I love what he says to him, like, you're gonna fail at this to begin. I don't care how great you think like, it doesn't matter. You're gonna fail to start. So you need to put people around you that can help you succeed. It's such like a testament to leadership. I really love that.
Yeah, and then, when he ultimately defeats M'Baku and you get that celebration, I love the music that plays when like that kind of victory fanfare of like this is the true coronation of the next king of Wakanda. And then, I guess on the flip side, my favorite action sequence is the second ceremonial fight.
Yep. I didn't want to pick that one because I feel like it was too easy. But
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna pick. There's a couple. There's one in particular where I'm not gonna get too cute with it. I'm gonna pick the obvious thing. But this, man, it's the contrast for me. I love that they bookended this movie with the same backdrop and the same type of fight scene essentially, but there is no pomp and circumstance with the Killmonger and T'Challa fight. The first fight, it's all personal. It's Killmonger even says it before the fight. He's like, I don't need everybody there. I just need him. And that's what you get. You get a couple of Dora Milaje, you get the royal family, and then you get the two of them. And then the tribal leaders are there, and the two of them, and it's shot at dark at sunset, at twilight, as opposed to the first scene, which is shot during the day. There's so many artistic choices that go.
Yeah, I think it's smart to do the sunset because it's literally setting on the reign of the king for a day. It's literally setting on T'Challa, so it's a really great point. I really like that.
A couple of the next thing I kind of have here. So just your favorite moment or scene kind of in this movie.
That's such a good one. I mean, my favorite one is probably, can I give you two? I'll give you one.
You can give me however many you want.
I'll give you an action sequence and a non-action sequence. I think my favorite non-action sequence, I think it's a tie between, I think it's just a confrontation with what was Forrest Whitaker's name?
Zuri?
Yeah, with Zuri. I think because that's where he kind of has to lay down the law as a king. Like, it's that kind of like the scene that Paddy Considine had as Viserys in House of the Dragon, where he needs to, I forget which episode it was in, but like he's like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I might be noble and like a good person, but I'm not stupid. Like, it was kind of one of those where like he's like, I'm your king. Like, we needed to maintain this lie. I watched you grow up. I'm your king now, so you're going to tell me what's going on. You're going to tell me the truth, essentially. So, I really love that one. And then also the scene in the apartment with Michael B. Jordan and Sterling K. Brown, I think it's just incredible. It's the perfect foundation for the emotional core and argument for the villain. And that's what villains are built on, is the argument of which they convey and display. So that scene in the apartment was really, really, really well done, and just really gets me excited for what Ryan Coogler can do even going forward with Namor, because Namor's going to be even more of a complexity of a villain in the second one. There's
an entitlement to, not T'Challa necessarily, but those around him that Killmonger is illegitimate somehow, right? Even like, but they're saying that built upon a lie. You know what I mean? That's the ultimate kind of tragedy at play here, is they're all protecting this lie and T'Challa never had any say in it.
Nope.
That's why he accepts Killmonger's challenge. It's not because he's too proud.
Yeah.
He accepts the challenge because he knows deep down Killmonger was hard done by his father.
It's the nobility of which his character lays upon is that very foundation of like, this is the rules, this is fair, we're going to do it. And like, I feel like knowing that like if he didn't die for a little bit and was clinging on to life, and that, he knew about the Dora Milaje going to follow Killmonger, he probably would have been like, that's the way it goes. This is the way that it's supposed to go. That's the king, so they follow him.
Yeah. My favorite moment...
was I supposed to give you my favorite action sequence?
You can. Yeah, sure.
It was definitely the beginning part of the Busan sequence. I think is incredible.
It's really slick.
And again, this is what reminds me that Ryan Coogler's an actual great director. And Rachel Morrison, I think she's one of the best DPs in the entire world. I think she's incredible. First woman to win best cinematography at the Oscars, which is incredible. So again, not only bringing people of color into the fold, but people, different groups of people into the fold. But yeah, that sequence is great. They do that little one take in the beginning.
It's really slick.
And Andy Serkis is just great.
He's tremendous.
Yeah.
Oh man. I guess mine, it was so hard for me, as I'm sure it was for you, to separate the reality from the film itself. So I'm not sure if this is the reality imparting on me, but I'd mentioned to you earlier the very ending scene when T'Challa returns to Oakland and the ship descends upon those kids, and this kid looks at T'Challa, and there's just this expression on Chadwick's face.
That little smirk he gives, yeah.
And the kid is like, man, like, is this yours? And T'Challa doesn't say anything. It's just this look, and there's this sense of just like hope, you know, and not just in the character, but in the person, and the person behind the character that I couldn't shake. Like, it was truly one of the only moments in the movie that made me kind of like emotional. And then you have the great musical beat with all the stars playing right at the end, and that for me was just like, it's such a perfect ending to the movie. Like when he looks at T'Challa and he's like, "Who are you?" and he just kind of smiles, and then the song drops and it cuts right into those. It's weird that I'm talking about a beautifully animated credit sequence, that whole sequence just makes you feel like when you leave the theater or you get up from your chair upon finishing, like you just witnessed something truly special, and that really bookended that for me. So that was for me what my favorite like moment was. And then it might not be my favorite action scene, but I like the back half of the Killmonger T'Challa fight more than I remembered. When they kind of get down into the mine and they're actually fighting each other, when you get away from the CGI-ness of, because it is a little rubbery in the beginning. I
definitely appreciate it a little bit more now, because again, it's one of those things where before I was like nitpicky and I was just like, this looks not great, and it doesn't look incredible, but I think it was the emotional status of what I was watching this movie, which just kind of blanked me from, just like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter too much. Like it's not the end of the world. You know what I mean?
And like I said, I think the second half of that is when they get kind of closer up on each other. I think it's actually really great, to be honest with you. So, tying in what I said about the end credits scene, this was just one I had written down. Favorite musical moment. Like, we talk about scores and implementation of music being important in film, so I'm curious to find out what you thought.
Yeah. So there's this bit. This is when W'Kabi surrenders to Okoye, and she gives that incredible line. And he says, like, "Would you kill me for Wakanda?" And she says, like, "Without question, I would. This is the nation that anointed me one of its protectors. I am the leader of the most dangerous. I don't care what Hydra agents you give me. I'm the leader of the most dangerous group of people in the world." So it's that, and then there's this high held note by a male singer, and then it leads back into the fight in the trains in the bottom, and it gives that like there's that wide shot of like the fight going on through Nakia's eyes, and then it flips down to them, and then it just crescendos right down into a crash and goes right into it. It's such an incredible Ludwig Göransson. There's a reason Christopher Nolan went out and got him, because he couldn't get Hans Zimmer to do Tenet. Like, Ludwig Göransson, I think for me, it went from like John Williams to Hans Zimmer, and I think Ludwig Göransson's the next in line for that. Yeah,
for me, it was the right in the beginning of the movie when they first descend into Wakanda for the first time, and T'Challa's like, "This is the best part," or "This is my favorite part," and you get that kind of like that chanting, like the Wakanda chanting, like as the ship descends and it goes through the forest, and then it opens up and like you see Wakanda. You saw it very briefly at the end of Civil War, but this is the first time you've seen Wakanda proper, and there's just this larger than life feeling you get that's predominantly for me was led by the music, because like the visuals are really great, but at the end of the day you have to remember it's like a CGI city. So what makes you feel it's the Avatar thing. The music makes you feel lost in the world that you're being introduced to, and we are being introduced ostensibly to a world. Like, we're not in New York, like in the Avengers movies, we're not in New York. We're not in Sokovia, which looks like, an Eastern European country. We are truly experiencing something foreign and something alien, but it's on Earth. So I think the best way to make you feel something in that scene is through the music. And the music is, again, it captures the culture of the moment incredibly well. So that would be mine for sure.
I love that.
Favorite line or sequence of or dialogue exchange? I can open it up too.
I mean, it's probably when he goes back into the ancestral plane and he kind of, he tells off the lineage of the Black Panthers, of the most powerful nation in the entire world. Wrong. You are all wrong. to turn your backs on the rest of the world. I mean, you know the amount of courage that takes you as a person to do that. Like, these are the people that built this and, you know, made all these rules and laws. And it's not the fact that he's saying it to all of them, it's the fact that he's saying it to his father. But I mean, 1B really is that line, that kind of dialogue that Sterling K. Brown gives right before he dies in the movie in Jobu, where he does talk about the state of the black community, and it's just that like the well up of tears that he gets in his eyes while it's true passion for his cause. And it's one of the great examples of, like, you know, you might not agree with it or what their methods are, but you have to listen to what they're saying.
Yeah. The one that stuck out for me was the first meeting between T'Challa and his father, when he says, "You're a good man with a good heart, and it's hard for a good man to be king." Mm-hmm. And, you know, that line, obviously it's an incredible testament to T'Challa, and we all know that that's the case, but it also works as a kind of a hint for what T'Chaka is covering up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's hard for a good man to be king. And our experience with T'Chaka is that he was this noble, you know, good man, good heart. And then you find out what he did to his brother, and by extension, what he did to Killmonger. And you find out, like, yeah, he's right. Like, T'Chaka, I'm not saying T'Chaka is a bad person by any stretch, but he definitely did, you know, a bad thing and a less than noble thing by killing his brother. So that line kind of, it was great in the moment, and it was really, really brilliantly delivered, but then it boomerangs back to that when you get to that moment where you find out what actually transpired in the apartment, and that one stuck in my head for me. And then T'Challa had another one, you know, what happens now determines what happens to the rest of the world. Like, goes back to that pressure piece. Like, every move he's making, every decision he makes is not just with his own self-interest and his family's self-interest, but he has the interest of a nation on his back with every decision he makes.
Yeah, and I kind of love the range that Chadwick Boseman has too, because there's this great part where they're coming back from the failure of not capturing Claw, and Okoye's kind of grilling him a little bit of like, this is what you should, everybody in the room's telling him what he should do, and he's like, I know very well what I should do. Like, it's
the first time he calls it general.
Right, it's just like, we could be friends as much as we want. Nakia is the love of my life, but I'm the king at the end of the day. I'm going, even if it might not be the best, I'm going to make that decision for myself. And I do love the decisions that he makes. He very much is a person of his own accord and own volition does what he needs to do and what he thinks is best for everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. Something I had written down here that I didn't know I needed, but favorite world building or lore moment, which I thought was just an interesting thing to talk about, like whether it's the lore of Wakanda, whether how it kind of expanded the MCU at large. This movie's a living testament to lore, right? Mm-hmm. Just establishing the lore of Wakanda. And, you know, I love that exchange between Ross and Claw when Claw's like, oh, you think this cannon on my arm is like impressive? Like, you need to see what they're packing behind that rainforest,
right,
buddy. Like that, I love that through line. And you get to the end of the movie, that first post credit scene when they're like, "What do you have to offer?" And again, it's just like that smile. Like you have no idea. Like, I love that introduction of Wakanda so much because it was so important for them to nail down. Because up until this point, the only kind of real introduction we have to vibranium is through the Shield and through Ultron. And there's references and hints that, like, there's something to this vibranium stuff. And then when you see the scope of it and what it's capable of. So I thought that was really, really well done.
Yep, I agree. I guess my favorite lore moment might be, man, that's a good one. I love the one between the conversations between Claw and Ross, where he's talking about, you don't understand what they actually, like, they have some stuff. And, like, even to go further into that, like, he says, like, you think you've seen, like, you might, like, his suit, cool, it's made out of it, but, like, you think that's the most of it? Like, they probably, that's like an nth of what they actually have. Like, they've
been mining for thousands of years and they haven't even scratched the surface.
Right, they've been sitting on a mountain of it. What's my favorite lore building moment in here? I mean, I guess to, you know, piggyback college class. Guess the piggyback of what you were saying is, I guess it's just the fly into Wakanda. It's the cliche one, but it's the perfect introduction and kind of portrait of what this black culture could look like in Africa. And it's really breathtaking. And I just love the line he gives before, and it's just like the shading on his face. He's just like, this never gets old. And then they drop in there, and then Ludwig Göransson drops why he's the composer for this movie. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I love the mysticism behind their rituals too. Mm-hmm. There's a modern aspect to it, and then there's the ancestral aspect to it that they do 3 times, twice with T'Challa, once with Killmonger, that you really see that kind of it's this technologically advanced nation, but there's still this ritualistic ancestral nature to their culture that I'm glad that was so relevant. You know what I mean? I just have this one down, favorite shot. So I was inspired by Twitter. I got inspired by Twitter for this category, like that screen grab that people always post, whether it's good or bad, those screen grabs that just make you stop and go like, wow, like what a shot, So for me, it is the wide shot after the fight between T'Challa and Killmonger, where they look at the sunset. It's the two of them are kind of engulfed in the sunlight, and they're framed by the cave, by the mine, and that was just like one of the most beautiful obviously it's one of the most beautiful moments in the movie, like dialogue wise and character moment, but it's set up by that shot, and that shot more than most in that movie was kind of burned into my brain.
It's a good one. Mine's very simple, and it's the opening shot where he's looking at the news break of the transgressions of what happened and what transpired in Vienna and his father's death. And I love how it's just like they're showing just like stock footage of African countries and people carrying water on their head, like they don't know what they actually have. But it's just the shot of him holding the helmet, and then it pans up to him looking at the screen, and it tells you everything you need to know about his journey in this movie, that he is now, his revenge story is over. He now is gonna become the king of Wakanda, and he needs to accept everything that it comes. It's beautifully lit. It's really sharp. Pans clean. Like it's an incredible introduction to a character we've already seen. And again, it's that adage that a frame can tell 1,000 words. I think that's the perfect way to kind of open his character.
That's a really, really, really good choice. And, it speaks to Ryan Coogler's talent. You know what I mean? That, like you said, you can do more. Sometimes you can do more with a camera than you can do with 5 pages of dialogue. Yep. You know what I mean? You can, like you said, that shot tells you everything in one shot. And that's what the sunset scene also did for me. Like, it tells so much about that shot with Killmonger and T'Challa tells you their journey, in one shot. Tells you this is what we've kind of culminated in and what we've come to. And then the last couple last couple categories that I have kind of all go together. They're all character performance moments. So the first one I have is most underrated character performance. Mine's Winston Duke. Mine's M'Baku. He's like the feral, savage version of T'Challa. You can tell there is a nobility and an honor to him, but it's just because he was raised in the mountain tribe and he's spearheading these kind of outcasts, essentially. It's really, that's one of the most interesting, kind of going back to the lore thing. They have all these tribes, and then the mountain tribe, the Jabari tribe, is just even in their own culture where, they're fighting against ostracization, there's still an ostracized segment of that culture. You know what I mean? So they can't even escape it even then. There's still a group of people that are still separate, despite, a culture that's not supposed to be separate. There's still the mountain, and M'Baku's the embodiment of that. And I think his star is only burned brighter from his subsequent appearances from, the Infinity War. I love them.
Yeah, he buys in, man. He buys in a little bit more and more, and that goes to, the character development of T'Challa himself becoming a leader that people can buy into and agree with and go to fight to the end of their lives with. and he was there present for the Infinity War, and he was there present for the last battle in Endgame alongside of his, his brother, essentially, which is really incredible. Mine's Njobu, Sterling K. Brown.
That's a really great choice.
And just the short amount of time he has, it's so impactful.
It can't be more than a handful of minutes.
No, it's got to be like, in terms of full out screen time, it's got to be like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe. Like he's not in this movie for a lot, but man, he's the anchor for Killmonger's emotional journey in this movie, and he just wants. I mean, at the end of the day, too, he's going on what T'Challa did in Civil War. He also probably a little bit wants vengeance for his father, like the one that was killed by the Black Panther, like this great leader of this country that's super secret that only you know about, and their leader killed your father, who just also happened to be your uncle too. Like that's super emotional and super personal. So
and the king.
And he's the king on top of that, and your father very well could, if something happened to him, he very well could be the king too. So, it's just these ideals that he implants in him, and just that idea of having him be a war dog and him seeing, it's because of how culturally incredible this movie is. Like the idea to incorporate that, like inject that straight into the plot of him and his character art of being like, he sees these people being oppressed with his very eyes, and they're not doing anything about it, and it just doesn't compute with him that they can. So I think that's great because he sets the main antagonist on his journey too. And he's oh man, give Sterling K. Brown every piece of work you can give him, because I think he's one of the best best actors in the world. Man. Yeah. I think he's emotionally sound. Yeah,
tremendous. That's tremendous casting. Like we go. Like I said, this cast ended up being a who's who kind of black talent in Hollywood, and it highlighted so many people that have either been kind of overlooked in other movies and put them all to the forefront, or in the case of Daniel Kaluuya or Letitia Wright, like it's served as like these star-making kind of performances also, which kind of segues me into. So I separated favorite character and favorite performance into two different things, because I think you can have a favorite performance without it being your favorite character. Favorite performance is where I wasn't going to get cute. Chadwick Boseman.
That's great.
Gave my favorite performance. I thought about it. I was like, you can't get away from it. There's a ton of great performances, but I think I'm reserving my best performance for Angela Bassett for this next movie, because I think she's gonna be. I
have a sneaking suspicion that she's gonna get nominated for Best Supporting Actress in this movie, or Best Lead Actress, depending on how they market this. Yeah. But I feel like this is an ensemble case where it's gonna be supporting, but. Given the time and space, I think that's going to happen, but you just can't run away from it. He is transcendent in this movie. He is the emote of the black and not just the black superhero, just the superhero, and like the emotional battles you have to fight, the physical battles you have to fight, and just how to lead, man. Like it's such a great portrait of leadership.
He did for this role what Robert Downey Jr. did for Iron Man. It's identical in my opinion. Like how, outside of, how many people could comfortably say growing up, maybe even in the black community, how many people can grow up and say like Black Panther is my favorite superhero? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Even probably in the black community, it's still not high. You know what I mean? But what he did, you couldn't get away from it. Like there was so many, this movie came out in February. By the time you got to like the following Halloween, I saw so many Black Panther costumes. It made my head spin. Like it was incredible, and it's all built on that performance. Without that performance, you don't get that cultural impact. Like you saw the respect he garnered from all touch tones of entertainment, and that's what it is, man. And that's what makes the ultimate tragedy of all this so just soul crushing. Is and Marvel knows it. Marvel knew it too. What they had. Yep. They knew what they had there. You know what I mean? And we talked about Endgame briefly. When he reappears in Endgame,
lost it. It's one of the craziest things I've ever been a part of. I said
it when we talked about Endgame briefly. It's not an accident that he's the first one through the portal. It's they could have picked any number of them, out of the vanished to be the first ones through. And it's him. It's him. He's the first one you see, and when you see his face, you feel what Captain America is feeling in that moment. Like it's almost like Captain America is feeling like T'Challa's here, like everything's gonna be okay. You know what I mean? And that's kind of like, that's just the presence he exudes throughout this movie. When he returns, you know, to confront Killmonger, like there's this relief. Like you feel like, you obviously it's a superhero movie, you know everything's gonna be okay, but like when he shows up on top of that, you know, scrap heaped plane that he just brought down, and you're like, everything's gonna be okay because he's here now. And yeah, man, that's everything he does, from his deliveries to all the moments he shares with T'Chaka, to the moments he shares with Killmonger, even the softer moments he shares with Nakia, which are kind of understated on top of everything else. It's just a 10 out of 10 performance for me.
There's a really great bit where they're coming back into Wakanda and she just grabs his hands and they just hold hands. Like, that's what Ryan Coogler's so good. That's also what James Gunn's really good at. Like, those just bits where it's not played for comedy or played for anything. Like, James Watts even got this with Spider-Man and Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, can we just let relationships be the relations? It doesn't need to be this big, like, you know, funny comedic bit. Like, Iron Man does that a lot with Pepper Potts. Like, no, like, that scene where Spider-Man leaves MJ is just emotionally gut-wrenching. And it's really, you feel their relationship brewing in this movie particularly, just by the subtleties of just like how normal humans would be around people that could or could not be their ex, or on and on. Like, this is really all so human. As ever so grand as this movie is, I think the greatest thing I could talk about this is however so human this is.
Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. I was thinking about, for some reason I was thinking about Andor when I was thinking about while you were talking, and this movie does a great job of it too, of like not feeling like these characters just got dropped into this movie. It feels like they all know each other. It feels like they all have these past relationships that we haven't necessarily seen, but we can feel. And I think Andor does that too, because, you know, not to get too distracted, but like when we talked about Rogue One, there was this world weariness to Cassian Andor, and you're like, why is he so world weary? Whereas like some shows and movies, like you get the quote unquote world weary character, but they don't seem particularly weary from the world that they're in. I get that same sense from this movie, not in the sense of the world weariness, but it does feel lived in. Like, I feel like they definitely thought about what were the last 15 years like for all these characters.
You know what's funny? It's not only like the last 15 years or the last 15 minutes before he went on this mission did. Like, it's just simple stuff like that. Yeah, so I really appreciate that. And then the last category I have, just our favorite character in general. You go first. Yeah, it's the Black Panther. It's so difficult here not to say it. And I would have said this before Chadwick Boseman passed away or after. I mean, I was just talking about this today with some people because the movie is fast approaching, and we're probably going to just talk about that for a second. But he was my favorite actor on this planet. He was. He meant so much to me and so many other people before and during, while he accepted the role, before I even saw anything. And he drops in Civil War, and you're like, this guy's really cool. And then he drops in this movie, but it's like, you understand why they got him. And it's not just because he's really cool. It's because he's just really incredible as an actor. But the character itself, his arc is just it's so prominent, and it's just so intentional in how they go about every single aspect, and having, you know, this dark mirror of having N'Jaka. It's really smart.
So here's my favorite character and why it's Everett Ross. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. It's again, I'm not gonna get too cute with this. There's so many other movies that we're going to cover down the line where it's not going to be the case where probably the main character is going to be our favorite or the best performed, but in this case, it is. It's T'Challa. He's my favorite character. After his appearance in Civil War, he quickly ascended like my personal ranking of like my favorite MCU characters, because he felt so three-dimensional, man. Yep. Like, he didn't, you know, he brought so much to that original appearance in Civil War. Like, you go back to the scene you mentioned with him and Natasha on the bench, where like that like kind of dialogue is like burned into my brain when he talks about, you know, the ancestral plane, and, you know, in my culture, death is not the end, it's a stepping off point, you know. And again, it's impossible not to mix the reality with
I thought the same thing with,
you know, the in-universe stuff when he's talking about that. Like, man, just it's remarkable. You know, it's remarkable what he did, and incredibly tragic and sad, you know, that he endured everything that he endured over the last few years of his life doing all the things that he was doing, all the press that he was doing. Like, it's very rare that you feel the perfect marriage of actor and character, but in his case,
I think his defining trait is his nobility. I think that's the thing that makes Chadwick Boseman, and it's the idea of nobility, but it's also the idea of, it's allegorical, but it's legacy. The legacy that he imprinted on this world is just, there's no second thought about it, that it's going to last forever. He's going to be one of those actors that are just going to be remembered throughout time and reverberated throughout movie history, Black culture. It's just, he's so important to the foundation of what we do and why we consume this art. He's the emo, and he's the proximity for that, or he's the proxy for that. So thank you so much, Chadwick, for what you did. Thank you to the end of the day. And I guess I want to leave this off. I think, honestly, if you're cool with it, I think we could sublet what we were doing just with ending thoughts about him, because I think that's important. It was that interview that Ryan Coogler just gave for the Black Panther podcast, and it broke my heart. But I mean, it just tells you everything you need to know about how incredible of a person he was. So the story goes that Ryan was, this was during the pandemic. It was literally when it first started. He's just like, Chad, do you want to read the script? Like, I got the idea together. Like, you're going to fight Namor. Like, this is going to be the thing that we're going to do for 2. And Ryan Coogler goes, like, he could tell he was laying down when he was talking to him. Like, you can tell, like, he was, like, laying down, and, like, I believe he was doing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom 2, which was the last performance we'd seen from Chadwick Boseman, and Denzel Washington was also trying to get in contact with him, but he couldn't. So Ryan calls him, he finally picks up the phone, I believe his fiance, and it just, all these things you find out, like, they were planning their wedding, in South Carolina, and he's sending out invites and all these things, and, Ryan just said, like, he asked him, do you want to read the script? And he said, no, I don't, but I trust you. Like, I'm not gonna, I think he said he made his fiance get out of the room, so he didn't break the NDA. Like, it's like that parent thing where parents don't tell you what's actually wrong because they're trying to protect you. Like, I genuinely feel he didn't tell anybody what was happening. And I mean, just to further that, like, he was going to children's hospitals while he himself had cancer. Like, he was speaking at colleges about, all the things that we do for each other, and kind of what Denzel Washington did for him, to give him that scholarship to college and pay for his college. Like, he's just such an incredible story and such an incredible person, but it's kind of like Kobe. He's written into the fabric of what we call film. So
yeah, I mean, there's so many, kind of stories and anecdotes have come out over the last few years. And then, I forget who it was. I think it might have been Dene Guerrera talked about how they took, the cast went to his gravesite kind of before they embarked on this journey. And she was so complimentary of the new cast that obviously didn't get a chance to meet Chadwick. And that's essentially what this movie, which we kind of speculated is going to be, is they did this for him, like, at the end of the day. And that's so powerful that this one man could galvanize this entire group of people to, like, do this, because it's, I can't quite make a comparison for like how difficult this whole process was for anybody. And we talked about, the stuff with Letitia Wright, like, that stuff is so secondary.
Yep. It's to the point where it feels like just afterthoughts and reverberations. Like, they had one task and one task only. And this is the other thing, like, people are so critical of, like, everything and, like, down to the minute. And, like, at the very, very end of the day, like, there's a reason, like, why things happen. Like, things all happen for a reason. And I mean, to immortalize yourself and, to tragically pass away, but he immortalized what he means to everybody and what he's done. I think that's the most important thing. And this movie is going to be a celebration. Like, I had trouble getting through the first 20 minutes of this movie. I don't know what's going to happen when I go to that movie. So, it's probably solely one of the most unique things that ever happened in cinema history. But I mean, the last thought is that it's the celebration piece. That's the only thing I hope people really focus on. Like, reviews, who cares? Like, cool, you review a movie, cool. Like, but at the end of the day, like, just go to, love an actor that you loved, man. I think that's more important than, critiquing one shot that you didn't love in that movie. I think there are just things that are more important than that.
Yeah, I agree. We've talked about, leading up to this movie that at least, you're probably the same, but like, I'm obviously interested in the story and whatnot, but it's not particularly interesting me to critique that, upon the movie coming out. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just, the whole situation is just, and it's just watching the first one again. Yeah, it's a celebration and you can be proud of the legacy that he left behind. But for me, at the same time, it's okay to just but not to remark on just how unfortunate that all is.
Yeah. Because these are people's lives too. This isn't just like, I think about this a lot. Like when people just, you wouldn't like somebody to do it to you, like at your regular job where like, you did something that somebody didn't like and, you got called out for it. Like, I think the same applies to these people that work on these films. And then you add what happened on top of that. Like, they are under the most incredible of microscopes right now. So I don't think the idea of, going out and nitpicking every last thing is just, and, you could do it because it's still a movie, but for me, I don't, you're going to do it, but I don't see the point as much for this. I think this one can get a little bit of a pass. Yeah. And just, just enjoy. Man.
And I don't think it's going to need it, ultimately. It's not going to need a pass. Like, I talked about Ryan Coogler before. Like, he's going to put in a y'all must have forgot kind of performance behind the camera. I think, just based on the trailers, I think Angela Bassett is due for an absolutely transcendent performance. Like, I'm not worried about it. You know what I mean? I'm just not. I think this movie's in incredibly good hands. It's opened well to circle back to kind of like critic scores and stuff. Yeah. It's opened at a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think that's even through the lens of the tragedy. Nope. I think people genuinely enjoy this movie. And just circling back to this first movie, just so hard for me to look past what could have been. That's the ultimate kind of tragedy of all this is as much as you want to celebrate his life and appreciate what he gave us, it's impossible not to just be sad that we shouldn't be having this conversation. Yep. That's the thing about, when any unfortunate thing happens, but especially when it's a disease and especially when it's cancer, like it just shouldn't happen. like sometimes these things happen and you look at the person involved and you're just like, not them, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, yep. We've talked about the story before about where we were when the news happened and how surreal it felt because like it shouldn't be. Right, like you're like, yep. Man, for him to suffer for so long and do all the things that he did and
just timetable it too. It's right when he's, you're staying in shape to, like, he's giving his body just to do this. Yeah, just to tell this story. He's giving his life to do this.
For it to just come out of nowhere and you're just like, that can't be right. Like that's not how this is supposed to go. Like, he's supposed to elevate, his career and win Oscars and become this generation's Denzel Washington. Like, that's truly how I felt the trajectory of his career was going. Yep. Like, I truly felt that's what he was getting ready for.
It's funny. I was, you watch movies from that day forward and I thought about it and there's like a couple of movies that had a predominantly black cast and I just gotta think that he was going to be cast in some of those movies. The prime example for me was definitely The Harder They Fall. I just genuinely think that he probably was going to play Jonathan Majors' character in that movie.
Yeah. It's and man, just that too, like him, just thinking about him sharing a screen with Jonathan Majors, who we've talked about as kind of like, he's on that Chadwick Boseman kind of ascent right now. And the idea that now Jonathan Majors, going back to like the trivial comic booky stuff, like the fact that Jonathan Majors is in the MCU now and we could have gotten them together in a Marvel movie, like it's right. Cancer sucks, man. That's ultimately what it is. Yeah. And we could talk about this movie, this character for another hour and a half, but we'll get plenty of time to talk about the world and Black Panther in general later this week when we talk about the movie non-spoiler wise, and then more fully formed next week when we talk about Black Panther Wakanda Forever, it's going to be an emotionally taxing journey for for however long it lasts. And yeah, that's really, those are my kind of final thoughts on it.
That's it.
What have you been up to?
I just rewatched Back to the Future, my favorite movie from the 80s. I was thinking about that movie, and I had to throw it on. You know, you throw on these movies that give you comfort sometimes, and I didn't realize how well Robert Zemeckis shot that movie too, which was really refreshing. I just, you know, it's this thing I held on to as a kid. My dad told me stories about him going to the theater to see it in '85, and then me falling in love with this movie. But man, you know what's funny? The emotional bits in that movie work so much better, and they're not as cheesy that I thought they were as a kid. Like, they actually genuinely work, and it's just, I guess a part of growing up. But I just think the portrayal and the creation of this idea of the future in 1985, the hub of pop culture and what's to look forward and what the 80s is setting up. I think that's what that movie truthfully was. And Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox are just electric together. They work so well. It's to the point where I didn't even ask, logical questions like, how does this 17-year-old know that? I don't care.
I love when movies do that. Yeah.
Don't care about that. That's not what this is about. Like, and you know what that helps with? The end with the whole thing about the letter. Like, it helps with all those things because now I'm emotionally invested. I don't really need to care about logic. Like, he genuinely just does not want his friend to die. That's it. What's that theory that Doc Brown's truthfully his uncle?
Mm-hmm.
I love that. But even if he's not, it's just his friend.
I would love to go back to that mindset of movie experiences.
I talked about it in the 80s.
Where you're just not so consumed by logic and because ultimately we don't do that with books.
No, you don't do it with books. You don't do it with video games. Like, you're just playing the play. It's just, listen, film, in my opinion, it's the one art form that encompasses all other art forms. It's like the only one that does that. So and you know why people, I think, critically do that is because it's people. Like, it's actual people that they're looking at, whether they be humanoid or not. It's still people that you're kind of, that's the person, that's your POV through all these worlds that you explore, whether they be familiar or non-familiar. But I love the thought of how we kind of consumed movies and like pop culture in the 80s, where you didn't there wasn't a Twitter poll of if Michael Jackson's album was overrated. It was just, we're just listening to an all-time great just be an all-time great. You weren't going into a Spielberg, but we're just watching these things and having these showcases of life. That's it. That's what I think we need to desperately get back to, is just enjoy, man. Just try to enjoy yourself a little bit more, and you're gonna fall in love with these things even more, like I have.
Yeah. Totally agree. I haven't had a whole lot of time to be doing things, honestly, over the last week. So I've just been kind of prepping for God of War Ragnarok, which comes out in a handful of hours, technically. So definitely excited to jump into that. By all accounts, all the pre-release reviews, it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's a lot of 10s.
High 90s, when you're talking about out of 100, it apparently succeeds in everything that the first did, and so much more. So just looking forward to really, for the first time all year, playing like a bona fide game of the year kind of. This game is gonna like change your life. So definitely looking forward to that. And then so we're gonna come back with you later in the week for a Wakanda Forever kind of non-spoilery kind of review, and then next week is going to be the full deep dive, full review of what we both expect is going to be a really special film and special experience. So definitely looking forward to that. That being said, you can follow us on Twitter at ProjectINF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. New episodes posted every Wednesday or Thursday, depending on when I can get some time to edit them and get them together, but generally Wednesdays when I try to we get them up. You can follow us on Instagram
at the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you so much. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts.
iHeartRadio.
Yep.
Pandora, because it's 2013 again.
I'll take a Pandora listen. That's fine.
Yeah. Amazon Music.
Yeah. So from me,
careful.
This isn't fair.
From the Everett Ross. No, I'm kidding.
No, I thought a lot about this.
I had a feeling you were gonna put some thought into this shotgun this one.
Just from my co-host, from my man Court, the Courtney of the podcast.
I'll take that.
Just unapologetically, you at all times, definitely just, you know, an appreciator of film, an appreciator of all things movies and actors, and really understanding what goes into all of it. You know, I think coming off watching and reviewing a movie that is unapologetically itself, I can think of no other compliment to give than to give you the title of someone who is unapologetically yourself. So
much appreciated. Thank you very much. You're making me emotional like I'm going to be on Thursday.
Yeah, so from me, from Court, we'll see you later in the week, and then next week for some Black Panther, Wakanda Forever talk. Rest in peace to Chadwick Boseman. It feels like it still wasn't that long ago, but at the same time,
I hope what this movie does is allow us to grieve as a mass. That's what I really hope happens.
Because we never really got that chance.
And I started to feel it watching Black Panther, but I feel like this is finally going to be it, where we can all, finally, as people that love him, can put him to rest.
Yeah. So we'll see you next week for Wakanda Forever. Goodbye.
Peace.